Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Survive This Crit. This episode, we have the pleasure of being joined by Killer Klowns' very own John Massari. John is probably best known for his work on Killer Klowns, but he has worked on hundreds of projects ranging from video games to TV to film, even under a variety of composer names. He was a recipient of the UCLA Frank Sinatra Music Award for Music Composition, and he even studied with Leonard Stein at USC. So we are so excited to get to welcome and get to know the man behind the killer score, John Massari. So welcome.
Well, thank you for that beautiful introduction. That's so wonderful. In case people don't know, maybe there are people that are familiar with the classical repertory. Leonard Stein was a pupil of a very famous composer named Arnold Schoenberg. So that's why I studied with him, because he was quite a thing. And so just to clarify that,
I remember learning about him in music school. So when I saw that in your bio, I was like, that's actually really important. We should definitely make sure that's in there.
Well, thank you. I studied at UCLA, and I studied privately also with a number of people. But I would recommend, just putting in 4 years at a university is like kind of like the launching pad, and your learning never ends. You're always learning new things. Last night I was studying a piece of music by a Finnish composer that his name is Rautavara. His last name is Rautavara, and I cannot pronounce his first name. But his music is so intriguing and so incredible, and I can almost hear where other composers have been influenced by his work.
Really? What kind of music? What style does he
it's really beautiful. Well, he started off as being very I guess you can quote unquote avant-garde, and then he embraced this almost very spiritual, expressive form, very much like another composer named Alan Hovhaness, an American composer. He wrote this incredible symphony that was very spiritual, very modal, very mysterious, and then he wrote 1,000 other symphonies just like it.
Oh, wow.
They're all
He
beautiful.
took a lot of inspiration from previous works and was like, I'm going to copy and paste some of this in here.
Well, I don't know if it's copy and paste, but it's like you get influenced by it. You're just influenced by the sound, or sometimes they call them schools of music, But there's one piece that he did. It's Cantus Antarctica, basically Song of the Antarctic. So what he did is recorded, and people have done this before, where they run a tape of sounds, pre-recorded sounds or pre-recorded music, and perform that with an orchestra. It's like early looping, right?
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I think it's one of the more successful attempts at that. So he recorded all these Arctic birds that have these incredible musical sounds, and he made a sequence of tapes of these sounds on a tape, and the orchestra plays along with them, and every once in a while it falls in sync, so you have these birds singing with the orchestra. It's one of his pieces that's most performed around the world, and it's really beautiful to listen to. You could just like put it on if you needed to relax and just have a calm atmosphere, and then yet be engaged in actual music composition, like music like that develops and has something to say, not just like a bed of musical wallpaper. That's the one to look at.
From your description, it sounds like there's a modern artist named Cosmo Sheldrake who does looping with bird sounds and stuff too, and it puts it in his music, but it does have a similar environment like your musician was creating as well. Since we're talking about music, I wanted to ask how you got started in this industry, even as a composer.
Well, it started when I was a tiny little boy. Both my parents are not musical. I didn't grow up in a musical family, but they appreciated music. They always had a hi-fi system, high fidelity system. Back when I was a kid, a high fidelity system was like a piece of furniture.
Okay.
It had speakers in it. It had a turntable, and they had more sophisticated ones that had built in a reel-to-reel recorder, so you can sit there with a microphone and record things and play back. They used to sell commercially available music back then on reel-to-reel quarter-inch tape, right? And then later on, they stuck in a cassette player, and then it went into components where you had all the separate items that you put on your bookshelf and what have you. But anyways, I was fascinated by that in our house, and I still have this problem. It's like I will wake up in the middle of the night, and I've been doing it ever since I was a kid. And I, so you can imagine a 3-year-old going over, knows how to turn on the hi-fi system, right?
Yeah.
So I'll turn it on and just scroll around and listen to all the stations at night, and there would be
Wow.
all kinds of
I'm sure
music
your
playing.
parents loved that when you were
No,
3
they
years
hated
old.
it. They were absolutely terrified. Absolutely terrified. Wake up and there's music playing in the house, and the kids sitting there looking at the thing. And I'm looking
That's the
at,
beginning of a horror movie right there.
you know that you would reach the right, you would tune in on a channel when the little red light was fully red. So I was like
Uh-huh.
fascinated with that. Okay, I got the best sound. I'm going to listen to this. Okay, I like that. And they used to buy a bunch of records and stuff. So I was always listening to that. And I wanted to play guitar so bad. As a kid, I got like a ruler and stretched rubber bands across it. It was like playing it, and
Yeah.
so they got me a little radio, a little AM radio. I also had a crystal set. Have you ever heard of that?
No, what is a crystal
It's a
set?
kit. It's a kit you buy it like at certain toy stores had them. It's a kit you buy, and it just looks like just a bunch of wires and clips, right? And you go to like outdoor water faucet, like the water that you would hook the hose up to,
Hmm.
right? And it's a piece of metal, right? So, and it
Yeah.
goes through the whole house. So you hook this thing up with clips, and it's like a spool of copper wire, and it has a little tiny head earphone, and you sit there and move this like a little metal arm across the copper wire.
Hmm.
You can get radio stations.
Oh my
I'd be in the
gosh.
backyard for hours. I go, okay, I can hear music. Yeah, here it is. I mean, it didn't sound great at all, but that was a crystal set. So I had that and a little Bakelite plastic AM radio in my
Wow.
room that I would listen to constantly. I was always looking and listening to music. And I was convinced when I was a kid that there were musicians were playing at the radio station all the time. I
Yeah.
didn't know that they were just spinning records. So, anyways, I was absolutely in love with music. I grew up in Southern California. I was born in New York. I lived all of my life in Southern California, and most of my relatives are in Italy. Some of them are in New York, but most of them are still in Italy that I keep in contact and visit all the time.
Northern Italy or Southern Italy?
They Milan and a city near Genoa,
Hmm.
um, that is called Chiavari, and then there's Cremona, and then there is Rome, and so I guess it's like from the midpoint up
Yeah.
where
Oh,
they live.
wow. That's
Um,
amazing.
so I grew up here, and we used to go to Knott's Berry Farm, which is like discount Disneyland, right at the
Yeah,
time. It was
exactly.
it was literally a farm. You can actually buy berries there, like real berries. It was actually a farm, and they had animals there, and they had donkey rides and all that sort of stuff. But what they had that was incredible was imagine a wagon train that's a round circle. It was a concert venue in the round. So you
Oh,
can either
wow.
sit in the wagons, the covered wagons, or you can be down. And I used to see like really great country artists like Buck Owens. I saw Chet Atkins, an incredible guitar player. He passed away some years ago, but and all the great guitar players, George Harrison, they just adored him. And I got to see him live, right? So I got to see all
Wow.
these great musicians live, and here there's the Buck Owens had some. It was country music that was it's called the Bakersfield sound, where it
Hmm.
was like country music, American country music, but it had a very distinct Mexican folk music influence in it.
Oh, wow.
The way they sang and the way they phrased their melodies and things like that. So I grew up like looking at, we would go every once in a while because it was almost free, because they were just paid to play so that people wander in to see it. And I would just be fascinated watching, incredible musicians play. So okay, still at this point, still don't have a musical instrument.
Right.
And it was around this time when I was 6 years old. I went to a movie matinee and saw a triple feature of The Time Machine, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and Mysterious Island. They had wonderful, wondrous scores. And
Yeah.
at that time, my mom decided she wanted to learn how to play piano. So we had a piano in the house. I couldn't get my hands off that thing. I was constantly playing it, so I have to sneak in and play it. I later on I would watch a TV series called Lost in Space,
Hmm.
and we had this little tiny Philips reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I used to tape some of the episodes and listen, especially when the music sounded nice. And that
Wow.
was a series that was by John Williams.
That's
Right.
crazy. Did you ever try to learn the music that you were hearing? Like try to learn it
Yeah, I
by
would try to
ear?
sit down there and play it, and I still do that sometimes when someone says, here's a piece by Rafe Vaughan Williams, it's a fantasy for orchestra, for string orchestra, can you do
Uh-huh.
something like that? And what I'll do is I'll listen to it, keep listening to it, keep listening to it. I won't get the score, I won't look at the score itself, because I just want to get the spirit of the music, and I'll sit
Yeah.
down at the piano and start just playing for days and days, and all of a sudden I'm playing in that style,
Wow. That's
so,
amazing. So you're
I'm
just getting absorbed. You're like
yeah.
osmosising
So
the music.
I mean, if you played them back to back, you'd say, oh, they sound very similar. And that
Hmm.
particular piece that I'm talking about was played by the Czech Philharmonic. So it had this big legitimacy to it when it's not only you get the music style and form right, you have the
Hmm.
right people to play it that understand that musical syntax.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think understanding the spirit of it and the group that was going to be playing it were two key components of what you ended up
Absolutely.
composing as a result.
Absolutely. Then later on, I realized that composing music was something you can do. And I didn't even know what it was called. I want to be a music writer when I grow up. I didn't know
Oh,
it was called composer. So little by little, I played in bands, and I was playing all kinds of music. I was playing in jazz bands, I was playing in symphonic bands, I played trumpet, the contrabass, sometimes French horn.
was one of those instruments harder to learn than the rest? Because I've heard that with musicians. I grew up playing a few different instruments, but I feel like for some people, there's always one instrument that was really hard to learn compared to the rest.
I if there's a will, there's a way. I can't say there's the hardest instrument ever to play would be probably the instrument that's not in your hands, because you can't get a hold of it. I don't know how to. I honestly
Yeah.
don't know how to answer that question. Um,
Well, then you were a prodigy. You knew how to understand the
well,
music and
well,
the
I don't know.
instrument.
I'm not going to admit to that. That was a prodigy. I liked the trumpet, and
Hmm.
the trumpet and French horn had certain similarities to them, and I
Mm,
played
yeah.
contrabass. However, I know I'm very good friends with a conductor. His name is Anthony Parnther. He's got massive credits. He conducts all over the world. He conducted the score to Oppenheimer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he just revealed to me about a year ago, and I didn't know this. He plays every instrument in the orchestra. He plays all the brass instruments. He plays his main gig with playing instruments is with woodwinds, specifically bassoon. That's
Mm,
his favorite, is bassoon. And you
wow.
go to his house, and he has like 15 different types of bassoons, because sometimes he gets called to play with the Chicago Symphony, and he has to have a certain bassoon, because their bassoon section has they use a certain make of bassoon, and they all
Oh,
have to have
wow.
a similar tonality, and
Hmm.
but he'll also play the brass instruments, and his knowledge of the repertory is mind blowing. And the fact that he's just friends with me is a big honor. That but
That,
I can nerd out about all this deep music stuff. Like I'll come across a 1950 recording of the Czech Philharmonic recording in Berlin in mono, not a stereo recording, a mono recording
wow.
of a symphony that we're very familiar with, and it's supposed to be like the conductor took the fastest possible tempo that you could ever play this piece, and it sounds like it was perfect, and so the only person that I can tell that would be thrilled would be Anthony. I'll text
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, check this out. He's I go, oh, I'm sorry I didn't wake you up. Oh, that's okay. I'm in Bayreuth right now. So he's like already
Wow.
in the
He's
middle of
already
the day, and he says, what are you doing up at 3 a.m?
I had to send you
So
this video now.
right. So anyways, I played in a band that was a heavy metal band that was
Nice.
hard rock. This is 1974, right?
Wow.
So this is in high school, and we used to go to concerts all the time. We saw David Bowie, Blue Oyster Cult, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Yes, all these great bands we used to go see at big arenas. And at one point we said, we got to do our own music. So I went home and I said, okay, this would be really cool. And the thing that I wrote is like 16 going on 17 was like dun 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 dun. And
The
so I
Killer
played that to
Klowns March.
yeah. And I says, I'm figuring out a chorus and an introduction, but this is like the basic thing. And they go, that sounds too jazzy. They didn't like it.
That's incredible, though, that you wrote it so
Right.
early. You just
Yeah.
found the right
It's like
chords.
it's like the ultimate garage band song. Bit by bit, I got into all kinds of music. I loved classical music. I mean, I didn't understand all of it, and I studied at UCLA. And I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I think I would have studied music privately,
Hmm.
because most of the composers we studied in school all studied privately. Mozart learned music from
Oh,
his father.
yeah.
Igor Stravinsky was supposed to go to law school to be a law clerk for a judge. And since his father was already in the music business, he knew Rimsky-Korsakov, and Rimsky-Korsakov was his teacher. Says, you just come to me, we'll study privately, and he took
That's crazy.
piano lessons and all that sort of. I probably would have done that, and then
Yeah.
just stayed home and work with a community of creative people instead of academic people. That's all I could say. I mean, if I had to do it over, I don't regret anything I did. I don't think it damaged me in any way. I mean, the only thing I could say that I would do much differently, I would have just not got. Don't think I would have gotten into industrial music. I
Hmm.
would have like being creative
Right.
and do my own music, have my own band, distribute my own music. Frank Zappa was a big influence on me, and he figured out how to like distribute his own music without having the ownership of his music being encumbered by other people. And then from there, if I wanted to do movies, I would do movies. And so one of my fanboy composers is Trent Reznor, that's exactly what happened. He was doing his music. He established his sound. And then all of a sudden people said, would you like to do the Social Network? And he goes, well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I'll just do whatever music I think works. And it's not like David Fincher, the director of Social Network, said, I love the music to Pretty Woman. Can you do
Yeah.
something like that? That's what I had to deal with for so many years.
Wow.
We like this kind of music, do music like this. And it's like, oh. And then I would get grief from people. It says, well, your music sounds like something from this movie. I know that's what the work orders say.
Yeah. That's
You know?
why I was called
Yeah,
for that job.
right.
You want other musicians to find their own sound first, and that you're saying that probably comes through private training and not doing industrialized work right out of school type of
That's
thing.
that's a preference. I mean, now
Yeah.
I know people that have played on a few Grammy award winning albums, and they have incredibly lucrative careers doing commercial music for commercials,
Yeah.
and they have homes all over the world. That they like that. That wasn't my bag. Same thing happened with Hans Zimmer. He got contacted one day by a director, and he was doing Rain Man. If you ever listen to it, you should give it a listen to. Video Killed the Radio Star.
Hmm.
That was his band. And it was like I think it was one of the very first music videos that played on MTV with,
Wow.
with that song by Hans Zimmer. So from that, his sound was attractive to filmmakers because they wanted
Hmm.
something different than the usual like Hollywood sound. And,
Right.
but even Hans Zimmer says, "Oh my goodness, people are starting to copy my sound. I'm not gonna do this kind of music and that kind of music anymore. I'm gonna go off, always kind of reinventing himself, kind of thing."
Yeah.
So, anyways, I got into the music business in my early 20s, like I want to say 21. Before I actually started while I was still in school, I was orchestrating for a composer named Jerry Fielding, who did a bunch of Clint Eastwood movies. He also did the theme to Hogan's Heroes.
Oh my gosh.
And he says, if you're going to work with me, you got to join the union. So go down and join the union. So I was like, I think I was 20, and I went to the union, and the person that signed me up in the union that did me my paperwork was a guy named Joe Mullendore. And I'm saying, God, that name sounds so familiar. And back then there was no Internet Movie Database. You
Right.
had to go to a library that had like credits, and you look up, and he had done like a ton of Star Trek episodes. So the guy, so I was going, so I went in after I got my paperwork, and I got my first check that I deposited in the musicians credit union. I stopped by his office. I loved all the music you did for Star Trek, and he says, "Yeah, look where I am now."
Oh my gosh.
But he had done tons of stuff. He was like arrangers on all kinds of albums, and I mean, which is really good because people that have made a name for themselves in the industry that now work administrative for the musicians union and other things like that,
Yeah.
they know what musicians need, So
Right.
it's
They're
like,
able to actually facilitate and
yeah,
provide
it's like
for
he
them.
wants to do something that perpetuates and when I joined the musicians union, it was at the very, very, very end of the time, and to me, I thought it had died out years ago, where musicians used to wait at the musicians union for a call that they needed. There was like celebrity was going to come there to perform, and
Mhm.
they need a band. They have the book and everything already written. They need musicians to come down and back up that singer. So you see guys with a saxophone case, and he's playing cards. They're just waiting for a call to come in. It's like, wow, yeah, exactly. Wow, that's non-existent now. You know,
Yeah. You can
completely
wait for a text or an email and you're on somebody's database.
exact, exactly.
It's way more efficient now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people would have never guessed it. Anyway, so I started working for this particular composer, and then he passed away at a very early age. It was really sad. He had a very stressful life, and so right after that, I worked with another composer who was probably like 82 years old, and he was doing a TV series called Little House on the Prairie.
Oh my gosh. I love Little House on the Prairie.
I only called him because I liked the music, right?
Mhm.
Not because, oh, I would need a job. So I got him on the phone. I says, his name is David Rose. Mr. Rose, I used to orchestrate for Jerry Fielding, and he passed away several months ago. And I would like to work with you if that's possible. And so I like come to his house, and like he writes out like a few themes. He says, there's a room at the other side of the house with a piano. In a couple hours, just come back with what you would do with these themes. And so I sat there, bing, 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 wrote out a sketch, and I gave it to him, and he plays it. Okay, good. All right, here. And he showed me a scene on VHS, and I'll
Mhm.
show you the scene. Here's a little slip of paper that has the timings on it. Use these two themes, make it work cohesively. Don't try. We're not doing a masterpiece. We just want to. So I started doing that, and
Wow.
I would do like maybe 15 seconds here, and then sometimes I would orchestrate his music. And so I learned a lot. I mean, because he was like from the old school. He literally, I would go to his house, and he literally would be in his kitchen having breakfast with music and writing because without a piano.
Wow. He could
Let
just
it
hear it
go.
in his head and
Exactly.
that's
And
incredible.
then after that, I worked with Mark Snow. Mark Snow did X-Files. I did not work on X-Files. I
Okay.
didn't work on it, but he did a bunch of TV series before then. Some that were very famous, and some that were just like out for a year. And so I worked with him for a little bit. He was also extremely talented. Where me, the way I used to work, I used to sit there at the piano, come up with a little sketch, and then orchestrate it. He would have the orchestration big orchestration sheets and use those and conduct them, boom, 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 and just he had a technique that was just so. Long story short, I learned a lot from working with these other people. They all had different ways of composing music, and it was at that time I got in with a group of people that were working at Disney when they were starting this new thing called the Disney Channel,
Oh, yes.
not to be confused with a canal. Well, actually, before that, excuse me, let me correct that. Before that, there was a producer that I had been keeping in touch with for years. And he said, I'm producing something for cable television. I go, what the hell is that? Oh, it's the line comes directly to your house. It's not you don't have to have an antenna, and you'll see incredible colors and everything like that. We're working on a new series. It's a new company called Home Box Office, And I go, how does that work? Well, you pay like $18 a month. I go, why would you pay $18 a month? We could see it free. Yeah, but we're going to do really cool stuff. It's stuff that no one's seen, that you can't see, that you can't get over the regular airways. And I, okay. Now I'm working on this ghost story. Do you think you would like to do it? It's kind of like mysterious and horror. I go, yeah, I would love to. Okay. And so like some months later, he gives me a sheet of paper. Okay, the author and the creator of the show has written these metaphors and ideas that he wants to have in the music.
Oh, okay.
And he's going to be, and they had like a storyboard, and he's going to be walking out of this elevator, and he's going to go here, and he's going to go into this library where there's books and models of monsters and spaceships and stuff, and he's going to talk about how he creates stories and stuff. That's fantastic. Okay, great. So I did a piece of music, played it for them. They go, he loves it. He loves it. He wants to meet you. And it was Ray Bradbury.
Oh, wow.
I don't know, Fahrenheit 451, the
Yeah.
Martian Chronicles. So it's like, and just years before that at UCLA, he used to come to the dorms when we would be showing a movie like once a month. We would play like some science fiction movie. About once or twice a year, he would come to the dorms and give a talk and read poetry.
That's so cool. So
And
you overlapped when you were at UCLA then? At least like briefly met him before you
yeah,
met
I
him
talked
again?
to him. I said the first story I ever read of yours was, I forgot what it was called, but it was a story about a little girl that they lived on Venus, and it rains constantly. And the
Mm-hmm.
one day it doesn't rain and the sun comes out every 100 years, and the kids are playing in the sunlight, she gets locked in the closet by mean kids in her class. And I said that was the most incredible story when I was like about 8 years old. And
Wow.
it was so impactful. Anyway, so we talked, and he would talk about careers and like ways of seeking inspiration and having inspiration being part of your life. So there he was. I was working with him, you know.
That's crazy.
Such an
That's a full
incredible
circle
experience.
moment.
Yeah, it's such an incredible experience. So from that, I started working from the Disney Channel.
Wow.
I did that for a number of years, on and off, because there were production teams that would come in, work on a project, and they leave, and then you go,
Mm.
"What happened to the people I was working with? They're no longer here. You know, they're gone. You know." And then there'd be
Was it
another.
because they were contracting or was it because of like layoffs?
It's the nature of the business.
Ah.
Nature of the business, you know, they independent contractors. So luckily I got in with a number of creative people that were like, oh, you know what, someone else is working on something, and they know that you worked on, so they'll call you back in, you know. So it was just on and off. It was never consistent,
Oh,
you
wow.
know.
That's got to be
So
kind of stressful.
it is,
As you're
it's, oh, listen, let me tell you, the media business is not for the squeamish. It is
I
not
my
for the
day job is in the entertainment industry. I understand that.
Yeah. So there I'm at, working with Disney,
Mhm.
and one of the producers I was working with, he became my roommate because he was between jobs. He says, "Listen, it's just cheaper for us to bunk out together, you know."
Yeah.
So he was very, very industrious. He would always be at the library doing research, coming up with, sitting at a typewriter, typing up new story ideas and treatments and stuff like that. And then one day he comes back with, he had torn out, you know, at the library you can get the trade papers like the Hollywood Reporter
Oh, yeah.
and Variety. So he tore out this little thing. He says, there's a guy, he showed me this little tiny slip of paper, you know, because he had to cut out the,
Yeah, cut out the ad.
you're not supposed to do. Anyways, he says, there's a guy in Washington, D.C. He's doing a trailer for his movie and he needs original music. And I go, huh, on a whim, on a whim. So
Wow.
I took whatever music that I had and put it in a cassette with a little letter, phone number, contact information typed out on my IBM Selectric typewriter. And like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I get a call, you know, from a guy with a very authoritative voice. He lives in DC, and he was a Teamster
Mm.
that did a lot of location work, you know, getting the locations, doing all the logistics for
Yeah,
commercials.
location
Right,
scouting
right.
and coordination. Wow.
So he said, I really like what you're doing. I shot this trailer for a movie based on an H.P. Lovecraft story. And he's told me, I go, that sounds incredible. And he says, there's a few things that you did I really like. And so if you can keep in that vein. So he sent me a VHS, and so I did it. He came out, we recorded it with a small orchestra. He flew out, and we had a really good relationship. And then I introduced him to some people, and he started working at Disney
Wow.
in the
That's
in shipping and logistics. And he was
that's
there for,
crazy.
yeah, he was there for like probably like 5 or 6 years. So then he called me. He goes, listen, this is like in 1987, and I had just done the Wonderful World of Disney theme, you
Oh,
know. So it's like, where's my gang? Where's the team? They're gone. You know?
wow.
That's the secret. I guess that's the secret. One of the secrets of the business. If you can work with a team that consistently does stuff and you grow with them,
Yeah.
like an acting troupe, you know.
Having a community to create with on while you're
Exactly.
even if
Exactly.
it's like outside of your day job, I feel like that could help as well because then
Yeah.
you're at least creating something as a group.
Right. And then there are people that they only got one movie in them, you
Hmm.
know, or one script. It's like the baseball player that does great, wins the World Series once, but when he comes back the next season, he just can't hit the ball like he used to, kind of thing. And so
Hmm.
people come in and out of the business. They don't always remain in the business. So he calls me, the guy that I did his movie trailer. His name is Eric Young. He'll be okay with me saying that. Eric Young. He also teaches at the Dodd Film School in Chapman University
Oh
here in
wow.
California. Yeah, so that's where he is now. And so he called me. He says, listen, something came. A friend of mine called me. They're three brothers actually, and they shoot commercials and they do special effects, and they're really creative guys. And they've just finished this movie, and they don't know who's going to do the music because the music has to be something special, and they're fighting with the production company over the music. And but you may not want to work on it because you're more of a serious composer. And I go, what is it? He goes, it's called Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And I said, are you kidding? I have to see that. I had just seen Richard Elfman's, like a few years earlier. Richard Elfman did a movie called Forbidden Zone.
Oh wow.
And when I saw it, I didn't understand it, but
Yeah.
I loved it. I go, I want to work on a movie like that. It's beyond bizarre. I want to work on a movie like that. So I talked to Stephen Chiodo, and he said, listen, we're having a meeting at Warner Brothers, and we're having a screening, and you can pick up a package. We're going to audition a bunch of composers. So I went there. It was a screening room that probably had 150 seats.
Hmm.
It was practically all full. I go, oh wow.
Wow.
And there were people there that I cannot mention their names, but there were a lot of pretty
Big name people.
well, they're big names now
Mm.
that were auditioning for it.
Wow.
They were auditioning for it. We all worked together in one capacity or another. But in any event, so I saw the movie. I absolutely fell in love with the scene where they come up. The farmer comes up to in the forest, and you see the spaceship. It
Yeah.
looks like, and I go, oh my god, I love this. I just completely fell in love with it. The whole movie, in my opinion, could have taken place in that spaceship. Forget about the
Hey,
location.
a sequel or a
Yeah.
prequel?
Well, that's we're always talking about that. Anyways, I picked the scene that I picked, and they say the instructions were the music director. His name was Bob Hunka, who later became the music director at Sony Music for a number of years. He said, just pick a scene. Before you leave, you pick up your pack that has like a little bit of instructions, when to deliver, how to deliver it, and a VHS tape of the whole movie, and pick a scene that you like, and let us know by a certain date, have it all done. And so I went through the movie, saw it like 4 or 5 times, and I love this movie. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
That's gonna like resonate with them. So I picked the scene. I figured the scene where they first go into the kids first go in the spaceship.
Hmm.
They don't know it's a spaceship. They think it's a circus.
Right.
And then they realize it's a spaceship because they come into this
The
room that,
power chamber.
right, exactly, from Forbidden Planet, that particular motif that runs throughout the whole movie. For the power chamber, I wrote when I went to the Cathedral of Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like I used to carry around a little tape, a cassette recorder, and I recorded like some. I used to sing into it, like if something inspired me, I used to sing in that melody. So I used that for that when they go in there. So,
Wow, that's
but anyways,
incredible.
so it's there, and then they get chased out of the spaceship, and then they run over the clowns, and the clowns come back to life and march onto the thing, and that's where I use the Killer Clown March.
The
So
one
I
that
did.
you wrote when you were 16 or 17.
Right,
So
right.
you
And
took
so
inspiration from multiple other
yes,
sources that from your life. You put a lot of your life into the that
exactly,
march.
exactly, exactly. So I figured if someone was going to sit, you're going to show them one scene that kind of shows what the whole movie's about. You can show
Mhm.
that part. So kind of
Oh,
like
100%.
just about every motif and
Every
melody
emotional climax is
that's
in
that
there.
that's in there is used throughout the entire movie.
Hmm.
So that was my that was my, I guess you can call it a keystone moment. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a
of,
really smart scene to choose too. Just
yeah,
like you said, because of all those reasons of having the different beats and everything that would sum up the whole movie within one 5 minute or 2 minute scene.
right. And like if you've ever gone to a musical, they'll play an overture
Hmm.
that has all the themes from that you're going to hear like
Yeah.
in a presentation. So that was kind of like the overture to the whole movie. So I was really thrilled. I synchronized it to tape, to the VHS. So all they had to do is play the VHS. And
Nice.
so I got the gig. I was just
Wow.
really thrilled. And the curers were very specific. They said, listen, they named all the movies that were out that they don't like the scores. I hate
Nice.
that score. It sounds like it's a cheap orchestra. I don't care how successful it is. I can't stand this. Please don't use these type of instruments that are in movies that piss us off. I mean, they were very clear. I go, no problem. I don't like them either.
Yeah.
I'm hearing, I'm feeling your pain.
So you then get to use a bit of your own creative sound and use your
Yeah,
own
they left
creative
me on my own.
process?
They left me on my own for like 3 weeks. For all they know, I took a
Wow.
vacation.
But you came back with
I had to
something.
beg. I had to beg. Outside of signing a contract,
Hmm.
how do they know you're just going to skip town? How do they know that?
That's true. That's that's a fair point. I mean, I think thankfully people that work in our industry love it enough
Yeah,
that they want to put in the work and they want to be a part of creating something special. Which
right.
do you have a moment when you knew how special this movie was? Was it that scene that you
Well,
mentioned earlier, that opening
me from
scene?
the very beginning, I thought it was very special. I thought this is because you got to remember just a little bit before that, Tim Burton released Beetlejuice. So I
Right.
thought, hey, this is part of that trend of bizarre, maybe sci-fi, maybe horror, maybe comedy. It's just one of those things. So I fell in love with it, right?
Hmm.
And I was begging the Kilbers, listen, you guys got to come to hear this stuff that I'm recording. If we're gonna change anything, now is the time to do it.
Yeah.
And they only came to I think two sessions. I
Wow. They really
I,
just trusted you to, they were like, this is off our plate. It is all yours.
I think it was a big gamble, to be quite honest with you. It's not like today where I can just every day send off a QuickTime that
Yeah.
they can upload from my Dropbox or my Realcraft or something like that. That
Wow.
they
The
can
process seems to have become a lot more fluid for musicians and
streamline. Yes,
composers.
absolutely. Absolutely. We mixed it. It came out. Apparently, it had a very limited review. I mean, excuse me, a limited release.
Wow.
Right. And someone who I went to UCLA with was working with the LA Weekly, and the sound designer had a very good friend at the LA Times. They both gave it good reviews. But by
Uh-huh.
the time people read it, like you read it on a Saturday, Oh, we
Hmm.
got to go see this movie. So, and the Saturday it was published was the week after. So
Oh,
people
wow.
go to the movie theater, but it's gone because it was
Yeah.
only in
It was a
4 days.
limited release. I saw that they initially only made like, I could be wrong, but the website that I found said like $350 in theaters initially because of how
350
limited.
copies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
So they would take the same reel and then ship it to another place. Like I think in LA, I think it only played in two different theaters, one in LA County and one in Orange County. And
That's
then
crazy.
it went all over the place. All these places went all over the place. And so then it was gone. Then we figured, well, maybe we'll find our audience when it goes to cable. So it didn't start to go on cable to like a full 3 years afterwards. It took a
That's
while. I
crazy.
think it was 1991 where it started showing up on in cable. So it took a while. And even then, it took little by little, people fell in love with generations of people fell in love with it until it came
Yeah.
out in DVD. That's when MGM bought it. I think from the original owners, it went to Universal. Universal sold it to MGM. I'm not 100% sure, but it had several owners. MGM, I guess now Amazon, is the owner,
Hmm.
and it's all the fans. It's all the fans that fell in love with this crazy, crazy little movie. And I'd say about 3 years after, I managed to get the masters, the multi-track masters back and borrow them for a month to do what's called a record mix. Now, there's a mix you do for a movie because
Hmm.
you have to worry about dialogue and everything like that. So things can't be too and back then they had restrictions like of not what music you wrote but how the music is going to be formatted so that it can play with the movie, right?
Right. It
So
can't
I did
overpower the dialogue in that type
exactly,
of
so I
setting.
did a record mix and actually mixed it onto digital in like
Wow.
1991. I'm returning the tapes back to the company, right?
Hmm.
And I guess there were guys from the accounting department. They go, "What's that?" I go, "It's one of your products. It's Killer Klowns from Outer Space." And he says, "Oh, sheesh, what are you taking it up here for? You should just throw it in the dumpster."
No.
No one's ever gonna like that movie. No one's ever. That thing is gonna die. It's dead on arrival. This is
Well, that
just
person really ate their words, didn't they?
right, right. And I said, "You know what? This movie's not for you.
Yeah.
This movie is for people
What
who
did they
understand
say
this."
when you
Yeah,
told them that?
that's exactly what I said.
What
I
did
said,
they say in response?
they didn't say, I mean, I just
I'm
dismissed.
too highbrow to appreciate
They were
good
just
horror.
dismissed it. They're eating the words now. It's so interesting. And there's an attorney that I'm working with. He's an old friend as well. He was telling me, did you ever think this would be a big deal now with all the merchandise and
Yeah.
the game coming out and all the Universal Studios having an attraction. And I said, I always had faith in it. It's just a matter of time, and I'm really happy that I'm here. You know,
Yeah. You're
it's
on
a
the other side of it.
right, and then it's got this new life to it that it's not just like, oh, it was like then. It's like it's part of culture,
Yeah.
part of Americana culture. So I hope it only to get better. So that's my Killer Clown story. I hope I didn't wreck your script.
No, you're good. This was way better. I did
Yeah.
want to ask though, so did you have any particular challenges when doing Killer Clowns, especially since you were just left by yourself on your first like big independent project just to score it yourself, and you're like begging the Kyoto brothers to come out and listen? And yeah, I just wanted to see if you had any challenges while you were getting started on that, and if there was anything massive that you learned as a result.
Well, okay. So anything I learned, I'll just tell you my experience.
Yeah.
It was a time in my life that I was very fortunate that I had no distractions.
Mm.
All I had to do was concentrate on this. I didn't tell anyone I was working on it. And the very first I just was diligently I was like a little kid again. I go, this is the movie I've always wanted to do when I was a little
Yeah.
kid. When I was in the movie theater all those years ago, seeing all those crazy movies that inspired me, this is the spirit that I should approach. Ray Bradbury was saying, had said that once. He says, that little kid, don't ever kill that little kid in you that
Yeah.
was so inspired to do what you're doing now. So I kind of like channeled that,
Yeah.
philosophy. And so every day I couldn't wait to get up. I'd be up at like either 6 or 7 in the morning, working to 11 o'clock at night. I love to cook, so always made time to make myself a nice little meal, but there were no distractions. I was
Yeah.
just
It
really,
was
really,
just
really,
you in
yeah,
the zone doing
absolutely.
your thing. Well, so did you then have like a particular process because you had learned from so many other people and
Yeah,
worked on their processes? Did you
yeah,
have like a routine that you would wake up
right,
7 a.m., get going?
right. Well, the first thing I did, I went through and I had read an article by Vangelis. He did the score to Blade Runner. And he said, sometimes I can sit at the piano and come up with the themes that I need and then go to the synthesizers and create something. Sometimes I like to play with sounds on the synthesizer, and that inspires me to create the compositions. So I had a particular synthesizer at the time called a DX7 that I just made all brand new sounds that no one ever heard coming out of that particular synthesizer. And I just for like 2 weeks would sit there and uh, pressing buttons and turning knobs and faders and stuff like that, coming up with all these sounds and storing them on a floppy disk. So embarrassed. And so I had that was the first process, coming up with sound. And as I was coming up with sounds, I would like
Mhm.
write, oh wow, this would be this. I would write out these little themes. And so I had my menu of themes that I really liked. And I always had something wonderful good ingredients to work with that I liked, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
And I kept moving and moving and moving, and every day was a really joy to work on it. And it's still like that when I work on things now. I
Yeah.
totally get immersed in what the people are doing. And I mean, there are epic movies I've worked on that are sitting on a shelf that no one will ever see. No one will.
Really?
I did a biblical epic.
Hmm.
It was really a beautiful. It took. They spent so much time in court fighting over how they were supposed to release it and things like that. That the cinematographer went out and shot the same movie and released it.
Oh my
I don't know if it's
gosh.
being successful or not, but anyways, but I have all this, I was so inspired to do, and it's like, boom, it just like falls flat. It's literally sitting on a shelf. I may buy the rights back to it. I might purchase it and just like
And then make it, yeah,
just
release
just
it to the
release it
world.
as an album, just say, listen, here, there's like 3 movies like that. That
Wow. So is that the most challenging part then of being a composer in general is knowing that sometimes even if you put your best work out there, that it just won't go anywhere because
oh,
of post production or because of the rights or all that sort of
just
stuff that
like
can
just like
happen.
anything else in similar, like for instance in aviation, the government will get a aviation company to design an aircraft,
Mhm.
and there are 3 aircraft companies. Well, only one gets picked. The other 2 have to be destroyed. You can never produce that plane again. That plane
That's
has to be
crazy.
destroyed, all the plans destroyed, because they don't want you to sell. Well, in that respect, they don't want them to selling it to another country. you know
Right. And that makes
I
some
mean, and
sense
they've
for
been
sure.
paid for it. They've been paid for it. So it almost like happens like that in music often.
Yeah.
That no one will see this movie. You can't use those themes again. You can't use that music again for anything else. That's why you'll just say, okay, everyone's got a price. Was it cost to buy it back? I
That's
just want
yeah.
I just
That
want
way
to
you
release.
have ownership of your sound at least.
Yes, exactly, and that could be very expensive. That could be very
Right.
expensive. I mean, there are a number of things that I was just gonna like. Can I just can I just buy it back?
Yeah.
Here, I'll give you back all the money that I paid for it, and then I'll pay you something else to own the copyright on it. And so, that's only happened once. That happened with the Ray Bradbury Theater. I bought back the theme, so now I own that. I
Wow.
own
That's
not
awesome though. At least it's
not
your
all not all the episodes, but the theme song.
Yeah, the theme that you
It's
wrote.
like my publish. I have the publishing on it and the whole thing. It was one of the rare instances because I think the people that produced it, it was just like another thing that they did. And
Yeah.
so if someone's going to give them money to buy the publishing on it, it's okay, no problem, you know.
That's fascinating. So it seems like as a composer, you have that constant struggle of either being in the industrial industry where you don't have creative control,
Right.
or being on the creative side where you get make something that is your baby, but you don't actually own any of the rights to it.
Right. That yeah, that's very
That's
yeah.
quite a
I mean,
challenging world to be in.
like for Star Wars, John Williams does not own the copyright to his own to the music that he creates.
That's crazy. It's a fascinating world that I know very little about. So that's why I was trying to clarify, make sure I understood it. What would you say then is the greatest lesson that you've learned from being in such a competitive and at times not always, I mean, satisfying while you're doing the work, but can be disappointing at times industry?
Well, there's a lot of lessons because we haven't talked about people that you work with.
Yeah, get into it.
You
Let's
know,
get into it.
there's a lot of things. I would say if you go to university, make sure you take your psychology 101 and 102 and keep your notes.
Mm.
You're gonna run into all sorts of individuals with all sorts of personality profiles that you'll find, if you're not aware of it, you'll find out way too late that you got yourself in a situation where you can't recover from it.
Wow.
Someone boxed you in a certain way. So that's one of the things. Creatively, listen, if you love doing it, and you're able to do it, and you're happy with what you do, and people are happy with the music you make, and you can have a family life where people don't regret that you're in your room all the time making music, all the
Yeah.
time, because it's and you have to learn how to work with other people. There are often times where I will do just one aspect of the music, and I'll
Mm.
have other people do other aspects of the music, because otherwise
Wow.
it's going to take a year for me
Yeah.
for me to do it. And I learned that one of my mentors was Bill Conti. He did the music for Rocky.
Oh,
He said,
wow.
he says, you got to understand, maybe you come up with a great theme, but someone else can arrange it better.
Mm.
If you tell them, listen, this is how I worked it out, but from here, then I have to pick it up back here. There either maybe shouldn't be anything, or there should be some transition. Right now, I have to work on the next piece. Can you do the transition for me? That kind
Right.
of thing. That happens all the time.
So being a delegator is a huge part of being a composer
Yeah,
then.
exactly. I mean, I get called by other people. Can you
Yeah.
fix this part here? Can you do this? No one knows what to do with this scene,
Yeah.
but here's the notes from the director. Okay, I'll figure. And here's the melody. Here's what you need to work with. So,
Hmm.
so it's cohesive. So the themes are cohesive, and this is the instrumentation we're using. And we'll send you over. Sometimes there's virtual instruments. We'll send you over the virtual instruments we're using to help it out, and then they will take it and produce it. Maybe they'll re-record it, re-edit it, or something like that. So, and that happens with me as well. I'll make a call. There's people that I call to, listen, I need someone to listen to this track and do percussion for the whole thing, and just make it work.
Hmm.
That's it. Unless he has a
Yeah.
specific thing. I need a triangle. It can only be a triangle in some part. Yeah, that's of course. But overall, real professionals can listen to it and they go, okay, I know what to put on this to make it work, and not
That's fascinating.
not overdo it and not underdo it. Just
Yeah.
do
The
what
musician's brain and the composer brain is just fascinating. So,
exactly. Well, many musicians, like when you have an orchestra play your music, they've played so much repertory.
mhm.
They basically can figure out from what you wrote what you're looking for, and then you can fine tune it from there. You know,
Wow.
you
Would you
know.
say that that ability just to understand music just on a completely different level, would that be
Uh,
one of the greatest values that you've gained as a person by being a composer? Because that's a pretty unique gift that not a
yeah,
lot of people have.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that is. It's just being aware of resources and limitations. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you have to have certain trust Like when I conduct an orchestra, I don't like to give them lots of directions. It's very, very short, very concise direction.
Mm,
Like if you look on my YouTube, there's as a proof of concept
yeah.
to do the Killer Klowns from Outer Space live to film with an orchestra. I had to like actually hire an orchestra and have video of me conducting the orchestra of Killer Klowns music to sell the concept. And we're still
Wow.
working on it. Still working on it. I mean,
But seeing it live would be so cool. It would just,
it is.
it would be
And
incredible.
I have done it live. I have done it live. But to get to that stage, I had to do it with an orchestra. So when I got the orchestra together, this is just an example. I don't want to bore you with a million stories, but
No, you're good.
basically, I told the orchestra this used to be a score from an 80s horror movie that was played by synthesizer, and I've orchestrated it. And that's all. That's all I said.
Yeah.
We went through it, and it would just tell, you know, trumpets at this point, you don't have to like pound it. You could be light. You can go light with that. And
Hmm.
then
I'm sure trumpeteers love hearing that.
yeah, instead of like blasting it, you just like it just got to be short. This is to be short. This is longer. You can be. They basically there was nothing else to say after that. It's just
Hmm.
there's
They knew what to do as professionals
yeah, it's kind of in
to,
the music, and it's kind of the music, and they can hear references to music that's in the repertoire that they've played forever, you know.
yeah.
So they approach it with the same industry, the
Yeah.
same enthusiasm.
That's really cool. Well, if you don't mind, I want to transition into a couple quick fire questions about horror and you
Okay.
yourself being a fan of horror, if you're
Okay.
interested. So, a couple quick fire questions about horror. What was the first horror movie that you remember seeing?
The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, the original one.
It was black and white, 1960 something. The director
Hmm.
who directed that also directed the movie West Side Story. So that was terrifying to me because you didn't see any monster. It was just
Right.
people in a haunted house. They were scared because there was
There's that
what
trope
you
drives
don't
me
what,
crazy where you
what you
can't
don't
see
see.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that would you say that's your least favorite trope? Is not being able to see the monster, or does that enhance the
Oh no.
experience for
Well,
you?
that experience to me was absolutely terrifying because I saw it when I was probably like 8 or 9. I couldn't sleep all night. I was
No.
waiting for the sun to come up. So terrified.
So, do you have a least favorite horror movie or least favorite genre,
I
subgenre?
say that I'm gonna earn a lot of friends. I mean, there are there are horror movies that are not my cup of tea,
Hmm.
but people absolutely love them. Their house is decorated in that, and that's fine. It's like there are people that don't like Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Which
It's
they're
not.
wrong, but
It's just not their thing.
right.
I mean, there's a lot that I mean, I've seen just about every horror movie, like from the 80s and 90s, and there's a bunch of new ones that came out that I
Mhm.
gotta see. I gotta see Megan.
Oh yeah, I
Gotta
haven't
see
seen
this-
Megan either, to be fair.
and I've got to see this new one out about the girl that gets she's a ballerina and she gets abducted.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Abigail. I've
Abigail. I gotta see that. And the whole series, it gets goosebumps on my arm. Also, the score does as well. Is the one that some spirit is in a doll.
Annabelle, maybe like from the
Okay, there's
Conjuring universe.
the Conjuring universe. The whole Conjuring thing is
Yeah.
so scary, right? And I'm acquainted with the composer Joseph Bishara that does that. He does incredible work, and he does it all with orchestral, with real instruments and prepared pianos. Where inside the piano, you have one piano that has like will have like aluminum foil weaved in the key, so when you play it, it has this weird buzzing sound. And he goes in and records a bunch of stuff, and then he like sculpts it to the scene. It's really just incredible. Incredible.
Wow.
Then Chris Young did a movie. I wish I knew the names of all these movies where the family finds an 8 millimeter film, and it shows like various murders that were on it, and it's like the spirit of this. I forgot what it was called, but he's done like at least one or two of those. Those are really good. Those are really good. And his first movie. Oh, by the way, Chris Young that did Hellraiser. I went to school with him.
Uh-huh.
Well, we were at different. He was a year after me.
Okay.
We studied from the same composer at UCLA. He came to my live to film concert, and he was just so thrilled. And I says, we got to get all together and do some kind of jam. And he says, I'm really happy that this is a success for you. And I go, it's Chris has taken forever. Can you imagine if Hellraiser was in the movie theaters for one day?
That'd be
And,
crazy.
and I told him, your Hellraiser was in the movie theaters long enough that I watched it twice. I went to see it twice, and it has a great theme. It's just wonderful. The music was just so. I mean, he just so cemented himself with that movie. The great thing about it is that people got to see it. He got an audience.
Yeah.
It was
Did he do
wonderful.
the original Hellraiser or did he
He were,
do
I
the
did the.
more
I think
recent
he
one?
did the. I want to say he did the first two.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
one from like 1987 and like
Yes.
the one in the
Exactly.
90s after that.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, do you have a favorite horror movie then? That's like one of your comfort ones that you go to on a regular basis when you need
Uh,
inspiration?
a comfort one. I
Yeah.
think a horror movie be comforting. I will say the fans that I've interacted with have all wonderful stories about Killer Clowns. There's this one girl, she's in Connecticut. Her name is Ashley, and she's got a whole sleeve of Killer Clown
Wow.
tattoos. I mean, it's basically the movies on her arm.
That's
And
so cool.
and I said, "What moved you to do that?" He says, "Oh, I was doing hospice care with my mom, and for the last, year before she passed away, and every so often we would watch Killer Clowns, and it would make her laugh. She would
Oh,
just laugh, So I can see how that's comfort food.
yeah.
But one horror movie of mine that I will. Someone says I didn't really like horror movie. I'll say you sit down and watch this movie and you'll like horror, and it's The Shining.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example.
It's a great movie, but I understand that Stephen King did not like the way his story was edited in the movie. And it'd be neat to see a version of The Shining that was really reflected the book, you
Right.
know.
I've never read the book. Are there any major
That's the
differences?
problem. The movie is like grand opera that it kind of
Uh-huh.
maybe it overshadowed the book. Maybe that's why he's upset. It's not a comfort film, but I love Carrie
The
because
original Carrie?
yeah, the original Carrie, because the monsters in Carrie is the hatred that all those kids have, that like unforgiving, awful hatred. That
That's
that
why I like Scream because of
that
the hatred of humans toward
right.
humans.
Yeah, it shows you how what monsters people could be.
Yeah.
That's scarier than any monster you can conjure up,
Mm-hmm.
or a devil, you know.
You're speaking my language there. I love the more psychological stuff,
Yeah,
especially stuff that is studying the human mind and
right.
why people act the way they do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Mommy Dearest is to me is a horror movie.
Yeah. Anything that really just deep dives into the psyche, it's going to be
Right.
unsettling pretty much no matter what the result is.
Right. I remember I took my kids to see the Narnia movies.
I
And
love the Narnia movies.
they were like 10 and 7. And they had kind of read the Narnia books, right?
Yeah.
And when the first Narnia book opens with, a German Heinkel 190 just dropping bombs on London during World War II, and all the kids are brought out to the country, and that's where they
Yeah.
come into the thing. I says, okay, you have to understand something. When the kids go into the cabinet, right? Okay, that's fantasy. But the thing with the bomber throwing bomb, that actually really happened in real life. That was part of World
Yeah.
War II, you know. And that was to them, that actually was scarier than some of the aspects of the fantasy of the movie. You know,
Yeah, I think I remember that being kind of pretty jarring too when I saw it as a kid. Being able to tell the difference between the reality that C.S. Lewis wrote in
right,
and then the fantastical world that was their escape from all of that.
right, right.
But I do want to ask, in regards to confrontation, and there's a follow-up question for this. Are you a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn?
I think I'm the fight and flight one.
Yeah. That makes the most sense to toggle back and forth between in my brain too,
Right.
because depending on the situation.
And I can only say that because it's happened to me in real life. I've had experiences in real life. I probably can't talk about because it'll take us out of this. But I've been in some really life or death situations. So,
well, maybe we'll have to have you back on and we can dive into that side.
sure. You can. Well, all I can say is from this jaw is completely reconstructed.
Wow.
So that's all I'm going to
and
say.
You can't even tell.
No, but it's amazing what you can do when you want to stay alive.
Yeah, the body takes over. So if you
Yeah,
were in
your
the Killer
mind
Clowns
takes
then, when you're fighting and flighting,
Oh,
what would you be doing?
I would keep my distance between them because
Okay.
I think what's not understood with Killer Clowns, I think they're trans-dimensional people. I think they can use time and space in a way that we can't conceive of. Because when you go into their spaceship and you go to the center where there's the power core, it goes on forever. But it's
Yeah.
a little spaceship on the outside, but on the inside it's much bigger. Kind of like in Harry Potter, they go into a little tent, right? Out from the outside, it's a little tent, but you go inside,
it's much bigger. Or like Doctor Who and the TARDIS, like
right,
that universe as well.
exactly. So it's like I think no matter what you do, you have to keep a distance from them.
Okay, so you would rely on the distance so they can't catch up to you. So it'd
Yeah,
be flight in the
I don't
sense
think I
of
will
I'm just not going to get close enough to deal with them.
exactly because you never know what they can pull out of their bag of tricks.
Well, would that be your tactic in the game then too? Because
That's a good question. I think I was well. I don't play games like I used to. I don't play games hardly at all. As a matter of fact, I had an interview with Riot Games before they were super big, and they asked me how many hours do you play video games? And I go, let's put it this way: I used to get kicked out of arcades because
oh my gosh.
it's just like the guy that's at the bar that they have to cut him off, kind of listen, you need to go home. And
Enough
then
gaming.
when they started becoming proficient on computers, I mean, of course, I told them the games I kind of play, and it didn't align with their philosophy because I love playing like aviation, like where I'm the jet fighter operating all the stuff, keeping track of the oil pressure and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to learn how to play the game proficiently, the clown game. But I would, there was another game that was less harmless. It was a golfing game. And I was more obsessed with hitting the ball as far out of the range as I wanted to go to the parking lot.
Yeah.
How far. And it's like whoever developed the game realized there'd be someone like me. So if you hit the ball into the parking lot, you hear the ball ping on top of the metal of the cars and break the glass.
Oh
and
my gosh.
now I want to go in there and hit the ball back. So that's what I would do with the Killer Clown game. I would go in the complete outskirts of the city, see where I can hang out. Of the town or whatever of the environment, see where I can hang out and hide, and then make my move.
Wow, that's a really smart way to do it because I didn't grow up with video games, but the very few that I play, it's a similar thing where I kind of stick to the outside the first few times I'm playing so I can get accustomed to the world that I'm in, especially since I am not good with controllers at all. I will always press the wrong button and kill us all if given the chance. So I will always try to stick to the outside to observe what's happening before I can actually feel comfortable enough to jump in. Right. But you also re-recorded the Killer Klowns March for this game, which we've seen on YouTube. And were there any major tweaks that you made to the march?
Well, I did. I've done in 2018. I released the Killer Klowns Reimagined soundtrack. So that's extended out to the Killer Clown March theme. The longest it appears in the movie is about like a minute and 20 seconds. So in the reimagined version, it's 6 minutes long.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's even got like this creepy lullaby at the very end. But in any event, the new one, which is called The Darkest Carnival, that basically how the piece sounds in the movie, but
Mhm.
played with like really awesome musicians and what have you. And then it goes off into a little bit of EDM influence, I guess you can
Oh,
say,
cool.
for the second for the other two-thirds of the song, just to like to bring it. It's a dark EDM, I guess you can call it,
Yeah, it's
a dark metal.
I mean, which is very much your background with your high school band,
Right, right, right.
You're bringing that back in. So that influence with the EDM, then, did you do that primarily because you wanted to try something a little bit different of a flavor in there, or was it to appease like the younger audiences that would be listening?
Well, I listen. I love Radiohead. I love
Mhm.
Cascade. I like Dead Mouse. I like Tiesto. All that music, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like I just want to like I don't want to copy them, but at the same time, I just want there's certain textures and vibes that I wanted to just explore, kind of like
Yeah.
melt them together a little bit,
Yeah.
you know?
Create a new movement out of these two
Yeah, exactly.
separate pieces that
So
were
it's more of a
familiar.
actually it kind of reminds me. There's a time in my life, maybe 15 years ago, where it was very, very stressful, and I found myself here in the Santa Monica Promenade, and I was going through all these incredibly stressful chapters in my life, but there's
Mhm.
all this really like happy pumping music, behind me,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I just wish I could be in the mood of that music, but I'm
Mhm.
not. And so I kind of righted that situation and kind of like incorporated that into the
That's
darkest part.
really cool. Yeah, so you can incorporate some of that the joy that you wanted to have into the
Right.
dark EDM.
It's
Eh,
fun, but yet a little
Yeah,
bit dark and scary. It's like a celebration.
it's a
So
celebration of horror.
yeah, yeah, kind of that's kind of what I wanted to bring to it.
That's
You know.
really cool. Well, so I know there have been talks in the past about the possibility of a sequel or a series, and in regards to what the Kyoto brothers want to do. There's
Mhm.
currently nothing that's been picked up by anybody, but where would you personally want to see the story go? What would you want the clowns to do?
So what I would like to do, I'll use another brand.
Okay.
I love Predator.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to go back to the Predator planet. I want
Mm.
to know if it's like super hot there. Is gravity much more intense than on Earth? And what do female predator species look like? Are they bigger? Are they like giant? And then
Yeah.
do the predator guys have to go kind of prove themselves by traveling the universe and bringing back all these trophies so they're worth it? And then when they're allowed to breed with the the female predator, does she eat them afterwards? You know what I'm saying? So okay,
Yeah, so
so
figuring out the ecosystem of the killer clowns
yeah,
themselves.
I want to know what their planet looks like. I want to know
Yeah.
what it's like for them. Is when the predators come to Earth, oh, these tough guys. But when they go back to their planet, oh boy, they have to stand in the corner.
Yeah, that's I
Like,
would be curious about that too because
you know,
they're such a clear apex predator on Earth,
right.
but in
In
their
their own
own world,
home,
who knows?
they're just doing that to prove themselves worthy because like a black widow spider, the female is much bigger than the male.
Right,
And the black widow spider eats the male after he's mated.
right. Well, I will
Because
say though, I know Rosebud and Daisy were the two female clowns, and
yes,
they were with the Terenzi brothers, and they Terenzi brothers didn't die, so that's
right,
good.
yeah,
Maybe so. Yeah, I would be curious about the relationships between all the different types of clowns, especially coming back to a planet with no leader,
right, right.
since in the first movie the leader died. So
Well, I would like it. This is what I would like. The original movie, the one clown spaceship is just basically a scout. They just
ooh,
want to see
yeah,
what it's like. So there's that potential. And then I want to go back to the clown planet and then realize where did they come up with the technology that they use? Did they inherit it from someone else who's no
yeah,
longer there? You know, and is the clown planet a moon of like a super Earth or something like that? This is just like without getting into detail. Those are like the little things, and it's like I have an idea for a musical.
A Killer
So
Klowns musical?
Killer Klowns musical that's based around Shorty, but it's going to be somewhat different than the movie, kind
Mhm.
of in the same way that the Witches is a different musical realization of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Was
Wicked.
that was it?
Yeah.
No, Wicked, not Witches. Yeah. So I have those ideas in my mind. That it's all
That's really
pending on
cool.
what the game does.
Yeah.
All
Well, that is a good reminder to everybody. If you
yeah.
haven't downloaded the game yet, do it because this episode will come out, I think, about 2 weeks after the game comes out. So I had two more quick questions, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Okay.
For audience members who maybe want to work in film and TV as a composer or in sound design, I know you've given a ton of advice through your stories, but is there one or two points that you would recommend for them to do?
Yes, if you're just starting out, you want to learn how to do it. And if you want, I'm not going to discourage someone from like going to a college or a music trade school or something like that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure that you do it in such a way that you're not going to be in debt.
Yes.
Okay. When I went to UCLA, the economy was very different back then because the ratio of what you earn to what things cost
Was a lot closer.
was a lot closer. For instance, I remember I every summer I worked at an oil refinery in
Wow.
down here, and I figured out it's the equivalent of making $30 to $50 an hour, and so that paid for my college.
That's
So
incredible.
I literally paid my whole year's tuition at the end of the summer, and paid for my dormitory. My dormitory, I can tell you exactly what it was. It was 1776, 1,776 a year.
A year? That's crazy.
Yes. But you have to understand the minimum wage was $3.50.
Mm.
And gasoline was like about 50 to 60 cents, right? So when you think of it, if you compare it to today, the minimum wage is, well, at least in California, it's $15 an hour,
Right.
and gas could be anywhere between $4 to $5, $5 a gallon. So it's like it's sort of that is sort of the similar thing, but housing is not the same ratio. When I had my first apartment in Hollywood, it was $125 a month.
Oh, gosh.
But
Oh.
I would make $700 a month at
Mhm.
whatever job I was working with while I was still establishing myself. I worked in warehouse. I've done all kinds of things, right, to earn some
Right.
extra at the side, and orchestrated for other people and what have you.
The artistic side hustle where you got to do something to
Yeah, exactly.
fulfill what you actually want to do.
So I was making like anywhere if I $600 or $700 a month was average. That's like for a single guy that's okay. But my rent was 125. Whereas
That's
if we had
crazy.
if we had the same ratios now, it'd be like, well, for a one bedroom apartment back then, if I was making $600, my rent would be $575. It's like there are people that make in LA, you can get a job where you're making like 2,400, your take home pay may be $2,600, but your apartment is $2,000. So
Yeah.
I don't want to get into an economic, but I'm just saying that when you go, you save up the money so that you could just pay for it and not have to worry about how you're going to pay for it and be stuck with interest payments, for your
For the rest of your life.
potentially the rest of your life, unless you can like make it big and just make one big payment. But if you can like do something where you can pay for it, or if you can get a scholarship, that's really, but I would say that is one of the things. And keep an open mind and be creative, be individual to yourself, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, can you do music like this? Can you do music like
Mm.
that? And sometimes you're just going to have to do that if that's what you want to do. But I think if you can establish your own sound and your own audience,
Mm.
there are people that do that with, they make apparel, their own custom
Yeah.
apparel, but that's their gig. And then they can license out their
Mm.
their design to a bigger manufacturer. Because there's this old story, like someone makes great pies. They make great apple pies. Wow, you should have your own pie company. Then you have to ask yourself, what can I make? I can make a great pie. Can you make 1,000 pies a day? Have someone to buy them, and then
Yeah.
to
Have an audience who's ready to.
yeah. So you have to, if thank goodness with social media, you can find an audience.
Yeah.
And it takes time. You can't expect your very first idea, your first approach, to be brilliant. I mean, look at Killer Klowns. We all thought it was great. No one understood it. No one
Yeah.
cared. No one cared. And then over the years, everyone's grown to love this stuff, where you see people with t-shirts. It's part of culture. Toys, look at that. Yeah. Pajamas, apparel, socks, anything that can fit that image is going to have it on there now. No one would have known that. We didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
We didn't know it. We were working on something we love to do. And luckily, we're here to help perpetuate it. Like, the Kyoto brothers are still active. I'm active.
That's amazing that you guys are there to help continue to tell the story.
Yeah.
It's not like someone else is going to take the rights to it and try to imitate what you guys did. But you guys, with your original creative voices, like you had mentioned, that other composers should try to find, it's like you can still use your creative voice. But I did want to ask one final question before we just pause recording. What are you currently working on, and where can audiences keep up with you?
Well, you can keep up with me on social media for sure. Depending on what happens, I'll have an official website with places to buy like soundtracks and stuff like that. And I'm working currently on my system. I have the Killer Klowns from Outer Space enhanced soundtrack that I'm working on. I've been working on it for like 2 years. It's my own project. And I have a good relationship with the publisher. And when it's finished, I'm going to have a record manufacturer make a wonderful copy. I would love to have a fold out, a fold out pop up book kind of thing. So the album, when you open the album, like
would it be a vinyl album then, or a?
Yeah, I'll do it on CD and download all the potentially on cassette, audio cassette. But I want to do a fold out book where like a diorama pops up.
Oh, cool.
Fun, so it's fun to look at. It's all about the fun. And I understand that there's a 8K or 4K copy of the version of the film coming out. They restored the soundtrack, although I said I have all the elements. They just, but the thing about releasing something is that you don't go in to change it. You go into just like keep it pristine in its original form. So this enhanced soundtrack, you could synchronize it to the movie, but it's supposed to be just for music enjoyment only.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll have
it's the way I approach it is, if I was doing Killer Klowns from Outer Space today with all the tools that I have now, using the same exact composition, this is the way I would produce it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it'd be more focusing on the arrangement and the transitions and things like that.
Sonic landscape. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's so cool.
I know that's the piece when they're going into the spaceship, or when they're being vacuumed up by the clowns, and halfway in the movie people are being vacuumed up and collected.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know that, but it sounds like wow. It sounds
like it fits the whole surround sound of my all my speakers and my place.
Far more dynamic, far more embellished.
Oh, cool.
There you go.
That's exciting. That is very exciting. So audiences will definitely have to keep up with you on Instagram, and make sure to download the game if you haven't already, so that way you can enjoy the game and enjoy John's music. Thank you, audiences, for joining us today in this wonderful interview with John. And thank you, John, for being a gracious guest and sharing your infinite wisdom with us, and just joining the ride of embracing the love and the craziness of Killer Klowns from Outer Space. So I just want to say thank you, and to our audiences, make sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening, and share this episode with a friend, especially a friend who is deeply enveloped in music theory or just loves Killer Klowns. All right, bye everybody.